Pied Piper by Black Hole CA. Read by Mika. Chapter 19. Galaxy. Even though Midoriya wakes up feeling exhausted, it's somehow the best he'd felt within the last week. Inko takes note of the change well, the woman having to hold back tears at the sight of life in her son's eyes. He'd adamantly denied that anything had happened, telling her that he was perfectly fine. But Inko could tell when Izuku was lying. He was a terrible liar. The black voids that had taken over her son's eyes had scared her. It terrified her to no end. She hadn't known what to do, or who to call, or who she'd even be able to explain such a change to. Jiru didn't know what happened, and the teachers at Aldera claimed to know nothing about his sudden change in mood. He'd looked like a puppet who had had all but one string cut, the 15-year-old hanging despondently from his last remaining thread. And as the days wore on, Inko had begun to feel more helpless. She didn't want to overreact. Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe she was simply blowing things way out of proportion. But that look in his eyes. She knew almost instinctively that that look belonged nowhere near her son. Towards the end of that first week, she'd hardened her resolve to sit him down and talk, and if things hadn't gone well, maybe she'd have to pull some overtime and set up an appointment with a therapist. Inko wakes up early, gnawing gently at her lower lip as she waits for him. But when she comes in, she sees fire in his eyes, sees the reignited flames flickering there, and all she can do is burst into tears and cry into his shoulder. Izuku is startled by her tears, but takes them as they come. He makes a startled noise as she rushes at him. "Mom! What's wrong?" he asks, wheezing through a crushed hug. What happened?" As much as she wants to cry more, she pulls away, sniveling and wiping at her tears. "Nothing, sweetheart." She laughs wetly. Izuku watches her skeptically. "You weren't watching that vet show again, were you?" She merely laughs in response. "That show always makes you sad. I don't know why you keep watching it," he huffs, smile tugging at his lips. "It always has the cutest animals, though." Namasa paces the length of the soundproof conference room that he and several others have found themselves in. "So," he starts, "when do we move?" "That's not such a simple question, Detective," Night-Eye states. "Overhaul has several known bases, and there's possibly more that we don't know about. It's important that whichever one we hit has him in it while we take action. I'm worried that he might try to disappear if we're not careful." Tsukachi runs a hand through his hair. "What about the address that I gave you? Was that new info?" Sir carefully tracks the man's path, watching him work his way back and forth on the strip of open flooring. "It's one of the bases that we've already had our eye on. It's just one of the small offshoots, though. We're still working on uncovering the location of the main base." Sir turns to one of the other people present. "I was hoping you'd be able to assist us with that, Eraserhead." Aizawa sighs, but gives a curt nod in response, looking as exhausted as Night-Eye figures one would with two demanding jobs. I also have to ask you how you obtained the address, Sakauchi-san, the hero asks, glasses tinting in the room's overhead lighting. Namasa pauses in his steps, hand falling away from his hair. We got it from a not-so-anonymous tip. Night-Eye is the one to raise a brow to ask the silent question. It was Piper, the detective concedes. Do you remember the vigilante that I first mentioned? The one who originally encountered the white-haired girl with the rewind quirk? Aizawa raises a surprised brow of his own. Piper's involved in this. Namasa sighs, collapsing into one of the empty chairs at the conference table. Unfortunately, he showed up outside my apartment the other night and dumped a load of information on me, before disappearing again. Night-Eye nods solemnly. You did mention that a vigilante had gotten involved, though I do wonder how he got the information. The base is a much smaller one. It doesn't draw much attention. The detective leans his elbows against the table, fingers folding just in front of his face. He said they had reason to believe it's where they're keeping the girl. This gains the attention of everyone in the room. Sir's eyes narrow dangerously behind his glasses. Are you certain? The man nods grimly. He usually tries his best to avoid me at all costs, but he willingly showed up outside my apartment building for this. I'd assume that if he's willing to go so far and risk getting caught, then he must be confident in the information he's given me. A seriousness falls over the detective. Night-Eye, Namasa Satz, addressing the hero. I know you said that you wanted to be careful about this, and take our time. And while I would agree with you under normal circumstances, I'm worried that Piper will try to move soon, with or without us. He's not the patient type. If we don't move before him, then we'll have to do it with him, because I refuse to let that kid risk his life on something this dangerous. A low murmur spreads through those gathered, as Aizawa recalls some of the moments from his first meeting with the infamous vigilante. His features had grown hazier in his mind as time dragged on, but he'd never forget those pain-seeped eyes. He wonders if the boy had seen that same expression in the little girl's eyes. If so, he can understand the vigilante's rush to find her. Sir's eyes narrow. It's a small base, but currently we have little to no idea who is inside, and what any of their quirks might be. This will be dangerous for more than just him. We'll be putting a lot of people at risk if we move before we're prepared. Sakauchi's right, though, Aizawa interjects. As heroes we have to act whether we have all the info or not. Not knowing is normal in this line of work. I agree that it's best to gather all the information we can, but if we wait too long we risk them gaining another hostage if Piper moves before us. Or worse, the hero says, glancing darkly at a lanky hero across from him. A body bag with a kid in it. Night-Eye sighs, pinching at the bridge of his nose in a futile attempt to ward off an oncoming headache. Not to mention that if he does move before us, he could put a group on alert for anything we might try to enact at a later date. So we're in agreement then, Namasa says, eyeing the looming hero as he stands. We'll move within the week. I'll finalize the date and inform you all once it's determined. In the meantime, we'll continue collecting as much information as we can, and pray that when the time comes, it will be enough. r/vigilante. Posted by you/gaster219 3 days ago. Where did Piper go? 126 upvotes. So has anyone seen Piper recently? He's usually around my area a lot, but I haven't heard anything about him doing anything. I've been looking around online, but I haven't seen any new pictures or sightings. He didn't get caught, did he? Straight out of the closet. 1.1k points. 3 days ago. I'm sure that the police would have made a report about him getting caught, if he had been. I'm more worried about him being dead or something, bro. Sleeping bag with arms. 104 points. 2 days ago. He's not dead. I saw a recent video of him yesterday. It looked like he got hit with an auto-tune quirk, LeMayo. It was literally the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. Existential crisis in a bottle. 27 points. 1 day ago. I noticed his absence too. I saw someone else mention that Piper might be dead, but I figure it's much more likely he was injured in some way during a fight, and is simply recuperating. Spambassador. 238 points. 2 days ago. You noticed too? I thought it was only me. I need more content from the Chaos Master. I mean, did you see that video of him throat punching that villain in the middle of their monologue? It was both hilarious and badass. Midoriya taps gently at Dale's window, under the cover of dark. He leans his staff against the wall and begins slipping his boots off before his friend even has time to let him in. Tsukachi slides the window open, whining the boy's name. Please, the teen begs. He won't stop snoring. Izuku's eyes brighten with quiet laughter as he swings himself through the opening. Who? Your uncle? Leo flops into his seat with a defeated sigh, before rolling his chair towards the closet. Yes, he hisses. It's so hard to get any work done. It's somehow worse than my support teacher's incessant pen tapping. As if on cue, Midoriya hears a quiet snore coming from the living room. The 17-year-old sends the other a look as if to say, "See?" before he starts digging through his clothes. Leo tosses the green-haired boy one of his hoodies, as Midoriya slips his mask off. Put this on. I don't want him to accidentally walk in on you in your vigilante gear. Is your mum gone again? Izuku asks, as he catches Dale's throat, slipping on one of the teen's oversized hoodies over his other clothes. He's sure that he'll feel a bit stuffy later, but for now the vigilante enjoys the extra warmth it allows him. No, she's not. He just had a long night, evidently. Leo sends his friend a knowing smirk, the 15-year-old returning it with a cat-like grin of his own. Our place was closer to wherever it was that you left him. Midoriya falls back into Leo's bed, his own tiredness beginning to catch up with him as Tsukachi moves back towards his desk. I wasn't trying to drag him out again, Izuku sighs. I was taking down this chick with a mutant quirk, and I guess someone called it in before I could finish up. He's been really busy lately, Tsukachi informs the vigilante. Ever since you gave him that info you had on that house, he's been running all over the place. Of course he hasn't said as much, but it's easy enough to pick up on it when he comes over looking like he did tonight. Izuku frowns. For as much as he's running himself ragged, It's been several days since I've met up with him, and they still haven't moved. Nail gives the boy a look of offense on his uncle's behalf. We can't move without info, Midoriya. Izuku lets out a frustrated breath as he sits up. But I already gave them info. No. Nail tells him flatly. You gave them an address and told them that the precepts were there. That's hardly enough to move on. They'll have to stake the area out first, try to figure out if the info is accurate, and if it is, who they might be facing inside. Midoriya stands, running a hand through his curls, staring past his friend's shoulder towards the window. It's just so frustrating. Tsukachi releases a breath. He's glad to see that some of the life had returned to the 15-year-old's eyes, but this rescue mission would be a dangerous one for everyone involved. If they didn't move before the Vigilante, then Leo would personally tell his uncle who Piper was. The teen worries at his lip. He'd sooner see his friend in jail than dead again. Directly behind Midoriya, the aforementioned uncle walks in with a little more than a quiet knock. His entrance startles the duo, Izuku freezing in place as the younger Tsukachi quickly stands. The detective comes in with a yawn strong enough to make water curl at the corners of his eyes. I get that it's the weekend, he says tiredly, but it's 1 a.m. Please sleep. The man pauses at the sight of the green-haired boy. Midoriya, I didn't realize you were staying the night. He tries to straighten himself, probably to look more presentable, but he's obviously exhausted, the beginnings of dark circles hanging beneath his black eyes. Leo lets out a strained laugh as he steps forward, pulling even to the Vigilante's side. Yeah, he got here after you fell asleep. Midoriya's gaze snaps towards the 17-year-olds as they glance at each other from the corners of their vision. Leo's eyes widen, fearfully honing in on the red contact still in Midoriya's eye. The other boy seems to suddenly remember its existence as well, the Vigilante's hand rising to cover the offending eye. Don't turn around, Leo thinks, desperately trying to silently communicate the message. He'll know. He'll figure it out. You'll be caught. We'll be caught. But Midoriya does turn around, hand still covering the right side of his face. We didn't wake you, did we, Tsukachi-san? There's an easy smile on the boy's face, and Nail stares at him in mounting horror. Namasa looks concerned when he takes notice of the hand covering the 15-year-old's face. Is there something wrong with your eye, Midoriya? The boy casually waves him off with his free hand. It's fine. I just have something in my eye. It's a little red. Namasa relaxes at the explanation, tiredness winning out over his concern. All right, well, if there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask. Though I'm sure Leo's got you covered. Midoriya nods, a gentle smile falling into place that softens his features. Leo knows that it's a ploy to fool his uncle. But even if for a moment everything feels like it's back to normal, it feels like Midoriya had never run into that girl. Feels like he'd never died. It's so convincing. So wonderfully convincing. Looking at him now is like looking at the face of a boy who had never known suffering. And then his uncle is leaving, telling them not to stay up too late, and Midoriya's faux smile is melting away, and Neo feels as if he's been forcibly wrenched back into reality. The vigilante quickly tugs Sakachi's hoodie off, tossing it back to the teen. Here, I was planning on staying longer, but if he's here, then I should probably head out. It's too risky to be around him. Neo nods reluctantly, knowing it to be the truth. The right question could leave Midoriya's entire world unraveling. If they question it, just tell them I left early. It's technically morning, so if your uncle's quirk works the way I think it does, then you should be fine. Neo releases a deep sigh as he falls back into his desk chair, the hinges protesting beneath his weight. Are you headed home, then? It's like you said. The 15-year-old starts. They don't have enough information right now. They're playing a waiting game. Sakachi's brows rise as he realizes what the younger boy is referring to. Midoriya, I'm not going to do anything rash this time. If I see anyone, I'll stay hidden and keep my distance. If the police have started a waiting game, then I might as well join them. Eddie needs all the help she can get. Worry settles between Leo's brows. He won't give you a second chance, Sakachi whispers, fear working its way up his throat. The vigilante pauses at that. I'll stay out of sight, Izuku assures him quietly. If all goes to plan, then no one besides you will even know I was here. But what if everything doesn't go according to plan? No one wants to be responsible for answering that question. I know how to run. But you don't know how to quit. Leo thinks worriedly. You don't know the definition of self-preservation, and that's what's got me scared. There's a part of Midoriya that doesn't want to go anywhere near the 7th district. It's the part that associates the area with his death. He reminds himself that the 7th district is where she is, and so forces himself to march across that invisible barrier and make his way towards the 8th block.
You're prepared to die again?
The vigilante grimaces at the emergence of the voice. Its face shifts, and he turns away when it begins to resemble the man he'd rather forget.
Children who don't listen to warnings don't deserve a second revival.
Izuku's grip on his staff tightens. I've never let the fear of death scare me off before.
That was before you died. That was before someone managed to kill you. Now you're headed right towards the man that has slain you so easily.
Its maw creaks open into a caustic grin.
The dangers of hero work.
It hisses, grin widening.
Are simply too high.
The vigilante curses, hardening his resolve. He's not here to fight. Not yet. He'd promised Deo that he'd be careful this time. Had promised that he wouldn't dive straight in. He peeks around every corner he comes across, checking both ways and then checking again. He keeps to the shadows and keeps his footsteps light. He keeps his eyes peeled and constantly searches the dark for dangerous figures. But he finds none. No figures, no danger. only the two-story White House with its caved-in roof and its pale, blue, westernized neighbor. His heart nearly stops when he peeks around a corner and sees it. The place of which he'd been searching for so long. The place which he had died trying to reach. He wants to burst into the small house, wants to run in fists swinging and lungs screaming, voice calling out the girl's name like some sort of banshee. But he knows that he can't. He can't rush this. He's sure that this is his last chance to get into the house.
You'll find that your usefulness has run out. I did try to warn you.
Midoriya physically flinches at the words, eyes darting around the surrounding area.
There's no one else to blame but yourself. You really should have listened.
There's no one anywhere near him, but still the voice persists, instilling the 15-year-old with a severe case of paranoia. He does his best to shake it off, but it remains, clinging to him like the remnants of a nightmare. He curses, attempting to bury the voice as he looks for a place to hide, somewhere he can stay out of sight but still have a view of the small house's front door. Usually there wouldn't be any good places in a residential neighborhood like this, but there was an astounding number of vacant and run-down housing in the area. A perfect place for shady dealing. Not a lot of witnesses if anything happens. The vigilante glances around the area, taking into account the location of all the obviously vacant homes, spying one that will work for what he needs. The house he approaches is 2 stories high. The outside is fully intact, but it's obviously falling apart in places. Several of the windows on the bottom floor having been boarded up long ago. It's one of the only houses nearby that isn't completely fenced in by stone walls. The front of the house left exposed, giving the 15-year-old a perfect view of the precept's base. He slips into the house quietly, setting up shop behind one of the first-floor windows that had yet to be boarded over. Midoriya crouches as he peeks out the window, balancing on the balls of his feet. It's not a straight shot, but he can clearly see through the base's front gate from here. The property is surrounded by one of those thick stone walls like most of the houses in the neighborhood, but it makes it hard to get a good look at the house itself. It's already almost midnight, but he can still see light seeping through what windows are visible over the wall. Midoriya sucks in a quiet breath. That's where she is. Then, in the dark, he hears something. The noise sets him on edge, goose flesh rising along his arms and legs. He freezes, holding his breath to listen for it, to make sure his paranoia isn't at play. But he hears it again. It's a quiet, only half-heard muttering of words from the floor above. The boy's heart pounds in his chest, and it's hard to hear anything over the noise, but he strains his ears in an attempt to make out what's being said. He curses silently, when he still can't make out the words. He steps lightly, making his way back into the main part of the house, heading towards where he'd seen the stairs. The voices fade at this distance. If I can just get upstairs. In his head, a memory of his own voice echoes. I'm not going to do anything rash this time. If I see anyone, I'll stay hidden. Keep my distance. I know how to run. I don't know who's up there. His gloved hands tighten around his staff, a scowl forming. You died, Midoriya. He killed you. You went in to try and find her without a plan and without preparation and without telling anyone. Without telling me. What would have happened if that man hadn't decided to bring you back? The boy had died once, just trying to explore the area. And now he was shacked up in a random house across the street from an address he'd looked at for so long, and he doesn't know who's waiting for him just upstairs. Yet, he'd been ready to dive straight in again, without thinking, without planning, without telling anyone. He'd been ready to do exactly what he'd just finished telling Sakauchi he wouldn't do. You didn't see the look on your face when you came crawling through my window that night. I need to get out of here. But the floorboards above him creak out a warning, as two sets of footsteps begin quietly descending the stairs. I thought you said the stone wall would mess with your quirk. Wasn't that why we were upstairs? The first to speak is a feminine voice. The words are said lowly, but audible enough for Midoriya to hear, as he quietly slips into a bathroom on the back side of the house. It does. This voice is slightly louder, more masculine. But I couldn't get everything lined up properly from up there. All I was getting was sounds of this one specific rat in the attic that is very aggressively gnawing through something up there. I'm hoping there's a room with a direct sight line to the front gate. Otherwise, I might as well be quirkless in this situation. You realize I'm basically quirkless in this situation, right? The duo stops at the end of the stairs, looking around the house. From his spot, Midoriya can barely make out their figures through the dark. Yeah, but you've got a reason to be here. If I can't hear anything they're saying over there, then we both lose our reasons for being here. Even if your quirk doesn't work here, we can still watch for people coming in and out of the house. There's a sigh. I guess. They'll replace us with another group next time, though. Someone with something useful. The woman gently elbows her partner. Being able to eavesdrop on people from afar is very useful. If that wall wasn't there, you wouldn't have a single problem. But the wall is there, the man responds dryly. If all goes according to plan, then no one besides you will even know that I was there. The two begin moving again, headed in Midoriya's direction. But what if everything doesn't go according to plan? The Vigilante takes another quiet step back, trying to further disappear within the small bathroom. I know how to run. There is nowhere for him to run.